Welcome to the Growers Mineral Podcast. This episode features audio from our most recent conference call. Each month, we host a live discussion on Zoom, bringing together farmers, agronomists, and industry experts to share insights on soil health, crop nutrition, and sustainable farming practices. For more information about Growers Mineral or to join our next call, visit growersmineral.com. And now, enjoy the discussion.
Welcome everyone to the Thursday conference call. I know we had some issues last week, but we hopefully got those all cleaned up. We did add a new option to listen to this after the fact. This is something that people in the Amish and Mennonite community have been asking for. So if you do call in to the Growers Main line number and hit 500, it will take you to the most recent conference call, so you can listen to that afterwards. We're going to put out some more information. That's just a new thing, and we're still kind of working through it, but just so you guys are all aware that that's also an option. So with that, Jim, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Russ. Russ tried that out on James and me, and man, it's pretty simple. We've got the other approach. You get a notification, and I assume Russ will keep that, and then you can get to the last conference call. But this one is, you just call right into the 800 number, and then, when they give you the option to poke in a number, you just put in the 500, and it works great. It's very simple for guys that want to listen to it again, that aren't as articulate, with the IT stuff. So this month, guys, if you look at the calendar, we've got a picture of a very sizable lime pile, and that happens to be in Kansas. And we were out there working with Norman Mann, and it's kind of a new area for us, and trying to get the growers program implemented. And so we were talking with him about the finer points of calcium application. And actually what we were doing at that point is just getting a sample and getting that run to make sure we had the right ratio between the calcium and the magnesium. And see, again, this is something that every fall at growers, we try to emphasize, getting the calcium on, getting that exchange number up there, trying to approach 80 on calcium on the exchange complex, and try to push that magnesium down to 10 or at least below 15. And again, this is a way of aerating the soil, getting the oxygen in. But there's a lot of other things, that go along with that. The oxygen is getting the right population of microbes in the soil, but you're also feeding them, which is giving us the right population of microbes. So that is something, for those of you that aren't as familiar with the growers program, something that we try to stress. And in the main part of the picture, it's Norman and Daniel Wolf and Dave Armstrong, and that's at a stone quarry basically. And again, these guys don't have any idea what they're going to do with this pile. And so we're trying to educate Norman to try to get that thing out in the field so guys can see what happens when they get the calcium level built in the soil. And next spring, probably about our last call in April, I think the 26th calendar, we're actually digging around in Norman's field. And I'll tell you, we got educated, man. Some of that stuff is almost like I-70. So we think that there's a very good spot to get this calcium on and make some things happen. But up in the corner of the picture is another picture, and that's a pile of lime up in North Dakota. And Keith Shutt is on with us tonight, and I'm just going to turn this thing over to Keith and let him talk a little bit about what he's doing up there in North Dakota. He's had great success once he's established the lime business, but now with this commodity inversion, and some of these guys think they're going broke. this is one of the things they want to kind of pull away from. And this is a struggle for Keith to try to keep these guys, keeping that calcium on, because we believe that's the way you're going to whittle on these fertility inputs, is to get these microbes going in the soil. So I'll kind of let Keith take over and you know tell you where he's from, where he's at exactly. He's not that far from Canada, and what's happening in the Red River Valley, and he'll talk a lot about where they're at. Sugar beet prices, it's a big issue. So Keith can kind of educate us about that north central region a little bit. So Keith, if you're ready to go, I'm going to let you go ahead and educate us a little bit about your area of the country.
All right, thanks, Jim. So yes, I'm Keith Shutt, northeast North Dakota, right in the Red River Valley of North Dakota, the Red River of the North, and we have 5 sugar beet factories in the valley, so we have a large access to sugar beet lime, which they call spent lime. It's calcium carbonate. It's like 36% calcium and less than 1% magnesium. So very, very good product. And yes, there is nutrient value in it. So the guys that have been doing it for several years, their soil test phosphate levels just keep climbing. And obviously, the first thing that they notice is soil structure. They just can't believe how mellow the ground is and how easy it tills up, and they don't have the big boulders in the fall when they go out there with the chisel plow anymore. They've disappeared because of the fact that we've aerated the soil and increased the microbe population, so a lot more oxygen pockets. And then, like I tell guys, it's basically like your garden that you've spoiled. So, but our soil pH up here is very high, so we're 8.1 to 8.3, very high pH soil. So of course, Land Grant University tells you that you got to be very careful with putting lime on, because you're going to drive the pH to the moon. And so when somebody calls and says, well, we'd like to do lime, but our soil pH is too high, how much can we put on? I always tell them, well, we could put 100 ton to the acre on, but you probably can't afford that, so 10 ton would be a good start. And then they're like, wow, what would the pH be if we did that? And I said, well, I don't know, probably 7.4, 7.5. It'd take a while, but it would get there. And they're like, really? It would go down? I said, well, yes, you have to remember that calcium, if you put it in acid, it's an alkali, and if you put it in an alkali, it acts like an acid because it always wants to be neutral. So I said, yes, if you had low pH, obviously it would come up, but we have very high pH in the valley, so it would go down. And it does take several years to get it to move. And I mean, I've seen guys now that I started with 14 years ago, and they're down in that 7.6 to 7.7 range. So, some of that stuff's come down, 0.5 of a point. So that's pretty big. But normally over the last couple of years, we've been doing about 100,000 ton, 100,000 ton in a fall. But we start when they take the hard red spring wheat off in August, and we normally spread until sometime into November. We went as far as this Thanksgiving before we finished up 2 years ago. We spread right up through the first week of January because it was so nice. But this year, obviously, acres are way down. Sugar beet payment got cut by a third. So the payment is pretty much at what it costs to produce, or a little less than what it costs to produce. One of the trade deals, they brought some sugar in from Europe, and that affected the market. And then, of course, American Crystal, the last 2 years have had record crops back to back. So they have an excess of sugar, and that hurt them as well. So a lot of guys have cut back on lime, And surprisingly enough, I've actually picked up a few guys because they talked to the neighbor, and the neighbor said, well, a lot of phosphate in that lime, and it's the cheapest phosphate you're going to buy, which is not a lie. So, most guys up here in the valley, most guys are within 30 miles of a sugar beet factory. So by the time that they paid a truck and spread a 10-ton rate, they're roughly in that $150 an acre range. The nutrient value in the beet lime, when we priced it this spring, was at a 10-ton rate was about $218 for a 10-ton application, and fertilizers went up quite a bit since then. So I would have to think that we're probably closer to that $245 an acre now in nutrient value at a 10-ton rate. So I have picked up a few new guys this year, which is kind of interesting, just due to the fact that all the commodity prices are way down. But it is obviously it is a struggle. I mean, I have equipment payments just like everybody else does, so it keeps everything very interesting for sure.
Keith, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
At $245 an acre, estimate the amount of years that you can amortize that investment over.
Well, normally you'll get 10 years out of that. I have several customers that say at about year 9 is kind of where everything peaks, and year 10 when they soil test it, everything's kind of flatlining again. So for the first 9 years, it's just a steady climb. In the valley, most guys' phosphate levels are very low, somewhere between 3 and we'll say 12 parts per million on an Olsen test. I have guys that we spread lime 4 or 5 years ago, and their phosphate levels today are somewhere between 60 and 85 parts per million. And every one of them has asked the agronomist, how much phosphate would we have to put on to get to that? They have no idea. So that it's kind of interesting. But the other thing that's interesting is, and I ask this question to a lot of guys, I'll say, what do you spend an acre on fertilizer? They have no clue. No clue. They get the bill at the end of planning, and they just write the check and pay it. They have no idea what they're spending per acre. So kind of interesting.
You amortize $245 over 10 years. That's pretty easy math.
Yeah, $24.50 an acre over 10 years.
I had a friend call me today and told me that his DAP application is going to cost him $165 for next year.
Oh, I believe that, and he's not putting a lot on at that price.
And they want that every year, Keith.
No, that's right.
Yeah, no, he's just going
right.
out there and dribbling it on. That's a very low rate for that much money.
See,
I tell guys all the time, the worst investment you'll ever make as a farmer is a dry fertilizer program. That is the worst money you will ever spend on your farm operation, and that I will promise you.
So, Keith, can you chat a little bit about how the spent lime that you're getting, how does that occur from the sugar, making the sugar process? Explain that a little bit so guys understand, where this calcium carbonate's coming from.
So they bring in limestone rock, and it's it's somewhere in that 4 to 6 inch size rock, limestone. They unload it off a rail car. It goes through a crusher, and then it goes into a kiln. And then of course it's cooked at about, because they layer it. They put a layer of coke in there, and then a layer of limestone, and the tower's tall. It's a couple hundred feet, and they they light that on fire and they get it burning. And when it gets up to about 2,200 degrees, it gets dropped into a vat of water. So when that rock hits that water, of course, it explodes. And then it goes into the cooking process, and that is how they extract the sugar from the molasses. Without the calcium in there, they cannot separate the two. And so it goes through a whole cooking process. And when the process is done, it goes down a line, and it actually goes into a very big press, and they squeeze that material to extract the juice from it. And then of course, there's some of the juice is real clear, and some of it is cloudy and murky, and it actually layers out in the tank, and that's how they separate the two when they're done pressing it. The murky stuff actually goes back into the cook process, and it gets run through again, try to recover as much as they can. And so when that's done, it goes out of the factory, and then it is actually, they have to pay the EPA for a landfill permit, because when American Crystal Sugar Company has it on their property, the EPA classifies it as a hazardous material. And the minute that a farmer signs a removal agreement with American Crystal to take spent lime, it is classified as fertilizer. So it's all about the money.
Right.
So
yeah, I'd like to comment
without the calcium. Without the calcium, they could not separate the sugar and the molasses.
Right. I want to comment a little bit on that, guys. See, the phosphorus is coming out of the beets or any of the dirt that might be with the beets, and that's what's ending up in the spent lime. But when they do these soil tests, they're picking some of that up. But the other thing is the phosphorus that's in the soil is starting to become more available also. Those guys that have been working with Keith, yeah, they're bringing in phosphorus with the lime, but they're also making what's in the soil more available with the calcium addition, because what that's doing is fertilizing the microbes. It's helping them to breathe, and they are actually releasing the phosphorus that's in the soil. See, when they say that the soil test is very low, that isn't a complete extraction of the phosphorus. That's just a certain availability. And as they get those microbes working, the availability phosphorus goes up. So what they pick up on the soil test goes up also. So the benefits from the calcium are helping with that phosphorus. And, you know, the guy's point about the expensive phosphorus is very well taken, because that right now just continues to go up. If you look at the fertilizer quotes from DTN every week, DAP and MAP are over the 5% increase. And that right now, you got guys like the agronomist from Farm Journal, Ken Ferry, saying, well, maybe we can back off on this a little bit. But he's kind of backed water on that and has said you have to be very careful about that, because with these new racehorse varieties, if you don't get that soluble phosphorus in there, you can put on a